In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a flower arrangement in a very common vase. This is a 5-inch by 5-inch glass cylinder vase. This is probably the most common vase we use here in my shop, and I'm going to show you how to make an arrangement in it today. My name's Ellen Frost. I'm a florist. I write a weekly newsletter all about flowers, and I run an online community called FlowerMore for flower nerds who want more flowers in their life. So I'm going to start by saying that you might think that this vase is too boring or too common to use very often. I disagree. It is a great vase for letting the flowers really shine. Sometimes a vase is too fancy, I think, and it takes away from the actual flowers. This vase is it's going to be in the background. The flowers are really going to shine. And this size, the 5 by 5-inch vase, is perfect for tables like a 60-inch round or a dining room table. It's a little bit small for a 72-inch round. You could use something more like a 6 by 6 on a 72-inch round. But a 5 by 5 is perfect for a 60-inch round table, which is a common event size table. I generally don't use a mechanic in this vase. I'm more comfortable designing without it, but if you feel like you want to use a mechanic in a clear vase so you can't see the mechanic, a taped grid is a great option. So a taped grid is just taking a waterproof tape and making a grid so that when you stick the stems in, they have something to hold on to. Sometimes I'm afraid that with a taped grid, the tape will come off because the stems are too heavy, but I learned a trick where you can take another piece of waterproof tape and just tape all the way around to hold these little edges down. So once you do that, those edges are really secure, and that makes this mechanic a really secure mechanic to use. So if you're not comfortable just designing in the vase, you can use this tape mechanic. Because I don't use a mechanic, I'm going to use foliage and flowers as my mechanic. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my arrangement with foliage. And the foliage is really going to start to make an armature or a mechanic inside the vase to hold other flowers in place. So the first foliage I'm going to start with is scented geranium, and these scented geranium are really long today, so I'm going to try to get 2 cuts off of it, which means I'm going to cut here in the middle so that I can get 2 pieces off of that stem. And I want to make sure that there's no leaves on the stem when I'm putting it in the vase. And because there's no mechanic, I'm going to put my stems in at an angle, and they are going to really rest on the edge of the vase. Sometimes people get frustrated because when they put the stems in, they think, oh, there's nothing to hold it upright. That's okay. We're going to use these stems to create that base to hold other things in. So I'm going to put a few more of these scented geranium in. And when you're starting with foliage, it's great to start with something that has a sturdy stem and something that's kind of fluffy, has some mass to it, because that will help fill in the vase as you go. I like to use a couple different types of foliage in my arrangements. So I've got the scented geranium, and then this is 9 bark. And it's pretty branchy, so I'm going to cut it up into a couple different pieces. And I'm going to use each of these pieces in my arrangement, cleaning the stems nice and clean. And as you can see, I'm just going to go still around in a circle, and I'm putting things in at an angle. And really, I'm working from the outside of the vase in, so that the middle is still feeling pretty empty, but the more foliage I have in there, the more I'm going to be able to start putting some things straight up and down. So the next thing I'm going to put in is some eucalyptus. This eucalyptus particularly has a pretty skinny stem. So I want to not start with this. I want to start with these other foliages that have a little more bulk, and then put my eucalyptus in. Now I'm going to start to fill in the middle because I have enough in there that, as you can see, I can start to put some things in straight up and down. And that is really going to help hold my other flowers in place now. So you can see that my greens really act as the mechanic in this arrangement. So the first flowers I'm going to put in are my line flowers. I'm going to use some Snapdragons. So you can see now that those snaps are holding straight up and down in my vase. All right, so next I'm gonna put in some Lisianthus. Lisianthus really is like a secondary flower. For this arrangement, I wouldn't call it a focal flower, but it's not filler either. It's very beautiful. So I'm gonna use these. You can either cut these into single pieces or use them sort of double. You can keep the little buds on or take them off. Usually I'll leave a few on, but I don't like to have too many of them on there. All right, so let me put one more of these Lisianthus in. And now we've made almost the entire arrangement before putting in the focal flowers. The focal flowers today are going to be dahlias. These are actually our first dahlias of the season from Seaberry Farm. And I'm going to trim them into nice single stems. The thing with dahlias, these stems are pretty thin, but a lot of dahlia stems are very thick. And so you want to make sure that your arrangement is really full and that mechanic is really in place before you start to put these in, or everything will just flop to the side. And that's not what we want. We want to be able to place our dahlias, you know, exactly where we want them without having them flop over to the side. All right, that's looking pretty good. So the last thing I'm going to put in, now that I have all of my focals in, are what I like to call the bits and pieces of the arrangement. So for this arrangement, I'm going to put in some Kiss Me Over the Garden Gate. If you're not familiar with this plant, it is a really cool, really interesting, very whimsical perennial that is native to China, but has been grown in the United States for hundreds of years. It actually was first grown, I think, at Bartram's Garden in Philadelphia, where I visited a while back and saw it growing there. And now we have only one grower that grows it. It did go, I think, out of fashion for a while because it's a little wild in the garden. It actually can be like 6 or 8 feet tall. And it's grown by seed. And sometimes people don't want to grow things by seed. So I'm going to pop these in, and I'm going to leave some of them tall and leave some of them on the edge so that we can really see that fountain movement. I want to make sure you can really show off that. All right, I'm just going to put this last piece in. You can see how much fun Kiss Me Over the Garden Gate is. Really adds a lot of interest. I love adding these last little pieces because I know those are things that people are going to pay attention to when they see the design. All right, so I'm just going to trim this a little bit. One of the reasons that I generally don't use a mechanic in this kind of vase is because we use these a lot for events, and always before I go out for an event, I need to change the water inside my vase because, you know, even now it's a little bit dirty. It has some floaters in it, and I want to make sure that the water is nice and clean. And so what I need to do is take the entire bouquet out, dump the water, wipe out the vase, refill it with clean water. If you have the taped grid, you can't pull the arrangement out like this. What you need to do is just dump the water out on its side and then use like a watering can or something to fill it back up. I really like to be able to just take it out and clean the vase easily. All right, so there you have it, an arrangement in a 5x5 glass cylinder.